There comes a moment in every strong woman's life when the room is quiet, the phone doesn't ring, the messages go unread, you look around, and there's no one clapping, no one checking in, no one standing beside you. But listen to me carefully. This is not your breakdown. This is your breakthrough. When a woman walks alone, it's because she's being reintroduced to her own power. Not the kind they applaud on stage, but the kind that grows in silence, the kind that teaches her how to rise, not because someone picked her, but because she picked herself. Solitude is often misunderstood. To many, it feels like rejection, like being left out, like punishment. But in truth, solitude is a sacred space, a gift that most people never learn how to unwrap. It's not something to fear or fix. It's not a signal that you're unwanted. It's an invitation to discover parts of yourself you didn't know existed. When you stop seeing solitude as emptiness and begin to see it as expansion, everything begins to change. There is a reason some of the strongest, most successful women in the world have walked alone at some point in their journey. Because when no one is around to influence you, when no one is there to validate or distract you, something extraordinary happens. You start hearing your own voice clearly. You stop molding yourself to fit into the expectations of others, and you begin shaping yourself into who you were always meant to be. That can't happen in noise. That can't happen in crowds. It happens in silence. Solitude is not a void, it's a vessel. It's where your truest thoughts rise to the surface. It's where your creativity is no longer diluted by comparison or criticism. It's where your inner strength reveals itself, not because you want to show it to someone, but because you're learning to believe in it for yourself. And that belief, that self-trust, that is unshakable. No applause can match the kind of confidence built in private victories. Some women stay in draining friendships because they fear solitude. They fear being alone with their thoughts. They fear not being needed. But when you embrace solitude, you stop fearing your own company. You begin to enjoy it. You laugh at your own jokes. You dance in your room without a crowd. You realize that peace is not found in people. It's found in presence, your own presence. When a woman is no longer afraid of solitude, she becomes unstoppable. She no longer tolerates relationships that diminish her. She no longer settles for attention that comes with a price. She doesn't seek validation from people who barely know themselves. Instead, she builds a life so full that anyone who enters it must rise to match her level. She becomes a magnet, not by needing people, but by needing herself. And solitude teaches you boundaries. It teaches you how to say no without guilt. It teaches you how to protect your energy, how to recognize what drains you and what feeds your soul. You begin to see that time alone is not time wasted. It's time invested. It's when you read, reflect, rebuild. It's when you heal from what hurt you and prepare for what's next. It's when you're no longer performing and instead you're becoming. Solitude doesn't mean you don't want people. It means you're not dependent on them for your joy. It means you've tapped into a source within you that doesn't fluctuate with someone else's mood, approval, or presence. It means you've become your own safe space. Every woman deserves to reach this level of emotional independence. To know that even if the phone never rings, even if the room is empty, she is still full. She is still worthy. She is still powerful. Not because someone said so, but because she decided so. So if life has placed you in a season of solitude, don't rush out of it. Don't numb it. Don't run from it. Don't treat it like a punishment. Sit with it. Learn from it. Let it stretch you, soften you, strengthen you. Because when you come out of it, you won't be the same woman who went in. You'll be wiser. You'll be clearer. And you'll carry a power no one gave you. Because you found it on your own. Isolation is one of life's most misunderstood experiences. Most people see it as something to escape, something to dread, something to fix as quickly as possible. But if you take a deeper look, you'll realize that isolation is not a sentence. It's a season. And like every season, it has a purpose. It has lessons that can't be learned anywhere else. When life separates you from the crowd, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's redirection. Sometimes it's protection. And more often than not, it's preparation for a transformation that couldn't happen in the presence of noise. Transformation doesn't take place in the spotlight. It doesn't happen when people are clapping for you or watching your every move. True transformation happens behind closed doors. It begins in silence, in stillness, in solitude. Isolation strips away the distractions, the comparisons, the need for approval. It forces you to face yourself, the raw, unfiltered version. And in that confrontation, you begin to grow. Not in the way the world teaches growth, but in the way your soul understands it. Deep, lasting, authentic change is born in the dark. Some of the most powerful shifts in life happen when you feel invisible, when no one is calling, when no one is checking in, when the people you thought would stay disappear. That space, though painful, is sacred. Because in it, you learn who you really are without the masks, without the roles, without the noise. You discover what matters, what doesn't, and what you're willing to fight for. You stop performing and start becoming. Isolation is uncomfortable because it forces you to meet the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. It brings to light the wounds you've buried, the insecurities you've ignored, and the fears you've disguised as strength. But facing those things is the first step toward healing. And healing is what clears the path for transformation. When you can sit in your own presence without distractions, you begin to develop a relationship with yourself. You start hearing your own thoughts clearly. You begin to understand your own needs and desires. That self-awareness becomes your compass. Many women avoid isolation because they equate it with being unwanted or unloved. But the truth is, isolation often comes right before elevation. It's the cocoon before the wings. It's the soil before the bloom. Life has a way of removing people, environments, and situations that no longer serve who you're becoming. And though it may feel like loss, it's actually alignment. The old version of you can't walk into the next chapter. Something has to break. Something has to shift. That's what isolation does. It creates the space for your transformation to unfold without interference. You learn to listen to your intuition. You learn to walk without hand-holding. You learn to stand without leaning. And in doing so, you build a kind of strength that doesn't need an audience. That strength becomes your foundation. It's not built on applause, attention, or approval. It's built on truth. It's built on clarity. It's built on the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you face the storm alone and survive. So if you find yourself in a season of isolation, don't resist it. Don't rush it. Don't try to fill it with people or noise or distractions. Sit with it. Ask what it's trying to teach you. Let it shape you. Let it stretch you. Let it stretch you. Because when the transformation is complete, you won't need to explain yourself to anyone. The woman who walks out of that season won't be looking for validation. She'll be carrying vision. She'll know her worth, her path, and her power. And nothing will be able to stop her because she'll be standing on the strongest foundation of all, herself. Not everyone will understand you, and not everyone is supposed to. You are not for everyone, and that's not a flaw. It's a gift. It means you carry something rare, something unique, something not meant to be diluted, just to be liked. Too often, women shrink themselves, soften their edges, hide their fire, all for the sake of fitting in. But the truth is, when you try to be for everyone, you slowly lose who you really are. And the most dangerous thing a woman can do is forget her own identity in the process of seeking acceptance. There is power in knowing that not everyone will vibe with you. Some will be intimidated by your confidence. Some will be offended by your standards. Others will misunderstand your silence, your ambition, or your refusal to settle. And that's okay. You were not created to please the crowd. You were created to live in alignment with who you truly are. That alignment comes at a price. Sometimes friendships fade, relationships shift, and people walk away. But every departure makes room for authenticity. Every exit creates space for something real. Trying to be liked by everyone is exhausting. It keeps you walking on eggshells, adjusting your tone, editing your truth. It forces you to play a role instead of living your reality. The more you compromise who you are, the more resentful you become. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own skin, wondering why you feel empty even when you're surrounded. That's the cost of performing for the world, instead of honoring your soul. When you finally accept that you are not for everyone, a new kind of freedom enters your life. You stop chasing approval and start choosing peace. You stop molding yourself to fit into circles that never saw your value to begin with. You stop over-explaining, over-giving, and overthinking every move. You begin to realize that being misunderstood is not your burden to carry. It's simply a sign that you're evolving beyond surface-level connections. The right people, the ones who matter, won't need you to dim your light to make them comfortable. They will celebrate your honesty. They will respect your boundaries. They will value your voice even when it shakes. These are the connections that fuel your spirit rather than drain it. And they only appear when you stop pretending to be something you're not. You don't attract real love, real respect, or real friendship by being someone else. You attract what's real when you become real. Sometimes the most liberating moment in a woman's life is when she realizes she doesn't need everyone to clap. She doesn't need a large circle or constant praise. She just needs to be true to herself. And when that shift happens, everything changes. You start walking differently, talking differently, choosing differently. Because now, you're no longer performing, you're living. You're no longer seeking validation. You're standing in your value. The beauty of not being for everyone is that it teaches you to be everything for yourself. You become your own source of strength, your own compass, your own biggest supporter. You begin to see that rejection isn't always negative. Sometimes it's redirection. It's the universe's way of clearing out what isn't aligned with your highest self. And when you stop fearing rejection, you start living with intention. Being not for everyone is a filter that protects your peace. It ensures that only the people who truly see you can walk with you. And that kind of walk, it's lighter, it's stronger, and it's more meaningful than anything you'd ever find in a crowd. Because now you're not chasing connection, you're attracting alignment. And that, in the end, is where real power lives. Growth is a beautiful, but often lonely process. It shifts your perspective, expands your mind, and elevates your standards. But as you evolve, something unexpected happens, distance. Not because you're pushing people away, but because you're no longer operating from the same level of energy, intention, or awareness. And that distance isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is working. Your growth is creating space, and that space is sacred. When you begin to heal, to reflect, to break cycles that have defined you for years, you start to see things differently. Conversations that once excited you begin to feel shallow. Habits you once enjoyed begin to feel draining. People you used to relate to begin to feel unfamiliar. That's not pride. That's transformation. And as painful as it may feel, it's necessary. You can't step into your future if you're still attached to environments built for your past. The more you grow, the less tolerance you'll have for anything that disrupts your peace. You'll outgrow gossip. You'll outgrow complaining. You'll outgrow the need to be constantly understood or validated. You'll even outgrow your old self, the one who used to settle, stay quiet, or seek approval. And in that process, people will notice. Some will feel uncomfortable. Some will misunderstand you. Some will distance themselves without warning. And that's okay. Your journey isn't about keeping everyone close. It's about getting closer to your truth. Growth demands separation, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You're not better than anyone, but you are better than who you used to be. And that progress will require new habits, new routines, and yes, new people. You cannot soar while holding on to weights. You cannot expand in a space that only celebrates your comfort zone. Sometimes, the distance is a divine filter. It removes distractions. It reveals true loyalty. It makes room for what's real. There's a cost to growth, and that cost is comfort. You'll feel the sting of silence where noise used to be. You'll feel the ache of solitude where familiarity once stood. But in that quiet space, something incredible is happening. You're reconnecting with yourself. You're sharpening your intuition. You're rebuilding your identity based on purpose, not people. And that clarity becomes the compass for your next chapter. People who once fit into your world may no longer recognize you. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You have. You've learned to speak up. You've learned to set boundaries. You've learned that your time, energy, and peace are not up for negotiation. And anyone who doesn't respect that will naturally fall away. It's not personal. It's energetic. You're no longer matching what no longer serves you. Growth doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain itself repeatedly. It simply moves. And what's meant for you will rise to meet you at your new level. Let people go if they need to go. Let habits die if they need to die. Let spaces shift if they no longer You're not responsible for carrying everyone with you. You are responsible for honoring who you're becoming. So when you feel the distance growing, don't panic, don't cling, don't shrink. Trust the process. Trust that what you're losing can't compare to what you're about to gain. Trust that elevation requires isolation. And most of all, trust that this distance isn't a detour. It's a doorway into deeper purpose, higher standards, and more meaningful connection. Because the woman who is growing doesn't fear distance, she respects it. She knows its part. 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 She knows its part of the she knows it's 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 part of the and she walks it with grace. There comes a time in life when you realize that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Being your own best friend isn't about being alone. It's about being whole. It means choosing to show up for yourself, especially when no one else does. It means knowing how to comfort yourself in silence, how to motivate yourself when you're tired, and how to love yourself without conditions. And when you master that, you unlock a superpower that no one can take away from you. The world teaches us to seek validation, applause, and companionship as proof of our worth. But real confidence is born the moment you stop outsourcing your sense of value. When you become your own cheerleader, your own safe space, your own greatest ally, you shift from dependence to empowerment. You stop waiting for someone to choose you, understand you, or rescue you. You become the one who gives yourself everything you once begged others for. Attention, love, patience, forgiveness, and support. Being your own best friend means you learn how to sit with your thoughts without judgment. You stop punishing yourself for your past and start speaking to yourself with compassion. You stop calling your flaws failures and start recognizing them as part of your design. You begin to nurture your growth like you would a friend's. You celebrate your wins no matter how small. You comfort your heart when it's heavy. You guide yourself back when you lose your way. That kind of love, quiet, unconditional, unwavering, is powerful beyond measure. This kind of inner relationship creates emotional independence, not the cold kind that pushes people away, but the strong kind that says, I'll be okay, no matter who stays or who leaves. You stop needing people to fill your empty spaces because you've already filled them with self-awareness and truth. You don't chase attention because you're already attentive to your needs. You don't fear solitude because you've made peace with your own company. You don't break when someone doesn't show up because you've already shown up for yourself. When you are your own best friend, you start living with intention. You eat better, not for a number on the scale, but because you respect your body. You set boundaries not to offend others, but to protect your peace. You pursue your dreams not for applause, but because they matter to you. You forgive yourself not because you've forgotten the pain, but because you refuse to live in guilt. You begin to make choices that honor your growth, your joy, and your healing. This superpower also acts as a filter. You stop accepting half love, mixed signals, and toxic energy. You stop settling for relationships that drain you, jobs that suffocate you, and friendships that no longer see you. When you've built a home within yourself, you stop tolerating anything that feels like war. You no longer beg for a seat at the table. You create your own table, and you decide who gets to sit with you. Being your own best friend teaches you that it's not selfish to prioritize yourself. It's necessary. It's the foundation for every healthy relationship. Because when you love you, you teach others how to love you. When you value, you teach others how to treat you. And when you walk in your worth, you attract people, places, and opportunities that reflect that worth back to you. No one can love you better than you can love yourself. And when you finally stop waiting to be saved and start standing in your own strength, you become unstoppable. And not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you've learned how to support yourself through it all. That is the real power. That is the kind of friendship that never fades. Loneliness can feel like a heavy fog, silent, still, and hard to see through. It creeps into your thoughts, makes your world feel smaller, and has a way of convincing you that this is how it will always be. But the truth is, loneliness is not a life sentence. It's not a reflection of your worth, nor is it a sign that you are broken. It is a temporary tunnel, not a permanent destination. And like all tunnels, it has a beginning and an end. In that tunnel, everything feels magnified. Your thoughts echo louder. Doubts creep in faster. The absence of connection feels like a hole in your chest. But what you must understand is that loneliness often visits when growth is happening. When the noise of the outside world quiets, your inner world begins to speak. And what feels like isolation is often the universe pressing pause, giving you the sacred opportunity to reflect, realign, and rise. Loneliness shows up when you've outgrown old versions of yourself, but haven't yet stepped into new ones. It's the in-between space. You may have walked away from people who didn't value you. You may have chosen healing over history. You may have decided that your peace matters more than being liked. While those are powerful decisions, they often come with silence. But don't mistake that silence for emptiness. It's not a void. It's a space where the new you is being built. Being in that tunnel forces you to face yourself. It teaches you how to be with your own thoughts, how to sit with your pain, and how to comfort yourself when no one else is around. It's where emotional resilience is born. It's where you learn that you are not dependent on external approval to feel whole. It's where you begin to realize that your own presence is enough. You don't need to fill every quiet space with people. Sometimes that quiet is your healing. This tunnel also acts as a filter. When you walk through loneliness without fear, you become more aware of who and what you truly need. You stop clinging to relationships that are rooted in fear of being alone. You stop confusing attention with affection or presence with partnership. You start seeking depth instead of company. And as you grow in that tunnel, you begin to attract people who match your energy, not your wounds. One of the hardest truths to accept is that loneliness is part of the process. It's the cocoon stage of transformation. You don't become stronger in the crowd. You become stronger in the stillness. And every tear shed, every moment of longing, every sleepless night spent wondering when it will end, it all shapes you. It deepens your empathy, sharpens your intuition, and strengthens your spirit. Eventually, you begin to see the light at the end of that tunnel. You start to feel more at peace with yourself. You discover new passions, new clarity, new standards. You realize that the tunnel was not punishment, it was preparation. It was where you learned to carry yourself, where you healed wounds no one saw, where you discovered that you could survive even without applause, affection, or attention. And that realization is powerful, because once you know that loneliness is temporary, you stop fearing it. You walk through it with grace. You stop trying to rush it, and instead you let it teach you. And the woman who emerges on the other side is not the same woman who entered. She's wiser, softer in heart, but stronger in soul. She's not afraid of her own company anymore. She honors it because she knows that the tunnel wasn't there to break her. It was there to rebuild her. Isolation often carries with it a sense of loss, a feeling that something important is missing. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that being alone equates to being abandoned or unheard. However, isolation can be an incredible catalyst for personal growth and inner strength. It is in the quiet, the solitude, and the spaces where no one else's voice can reach you that true authority is born. The kind of authority that isn't rooted in force or domination, but in self-understanding, wisdom, and unshakable confidence. When you are isolated, whether by circumstance or choice, you are faced with the most intimate of relationships, the one with yourself. There are no distractions, no external expectations, and no noise to drown out your inner voice. In that space, you learn to listen. You learn to hear what your heart is telling you, what your soul needs, and what your true desires are. This deep connection to your own truth is the foundation of authority. Because authority isn't about power over others, it's about power within. The ability to lead yourself, to make decisions that honor your highest self, and to stand firm in your beliefs even when no one else is watching. In isolation, there is room for reflection. You confront the parts of yourself that you may have neglected in the chaos of everyday life. You can no longer run from your insecurities, your fears, or your doubts. They must be faced head-on, and in doing so, you find a new strength. You begin to understand that your vulnerabilities are not weaknesses, but sources of power. Each challenge you face in isolation is a chance to build resilience, to reinforce your mental and emotional muscles, and to emerge stronger. This period of self-reflection allows you to build authority from a place of authenticity. You are not shaped by the opinions of others or by societal pressures. You are shaped by your own values, your own experiences, and your own understanding of what truly matters. This kind of authority doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. It simply exists, grounded in the knowledge that you are enough as you are. This authority doesn't come from external sources. It is self-generated and radiates outwards. As you embrace isolation and spend more time in your own company, you begin to develop clarity. You start to see what truly matters, what aligns with your soul, and what doesn't. Your decisions become more deliberate, more aligned with your values. You begin to trust your intuition, and with that trust comes an inner confidence that others can sense. When you have authority over yourself, you naturally begin to attract respect from others. Not because you demand it, but because you no longer need to seek it. You exude it from within. This newfound sense of authority gives you the power to set boundaries. You no longer tolerate what drains you, what disrespects your energy, or what doesn't align with your purpose. Isolation teaches you the importance of self preservation. You learn that saying no is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. By respecting yourself first, you teach others how to respect you. And in doing so, you create an environment where your personal authority is not only accepted but appreciated. Isolation reveals to you the beauty of your own company. You no longer see it as a punishment or a void, but as a space of empowerment. You learn that you do not need external validation to feel whole. You learn that true authority comes from within and that it grows stronger in the stillness. As you embrace this truth, you become the kind of leader who leads by example, not by force. Your presence becomes commanding, not because you try to be, but because you have cultivated an inner power that no one can take from you. And from that place, you can step into the world with confidence, ready to influence others not by controlling them, but by inspiring them through your own strength and self-assuredness.